Good morning, YouTube. It is 10 a.m. in the great state of Texas, about 82 degrees, and it's around noon. So, we are working with Purple Heart today, and look at that beautiful table. Fortunately, we're working with just a small block today. That big slab is still drying out, so we will get to that at a later project. But today, what we're going to do is take this small little piece of wood that I got from Woodcraft, and we are going to make a small little tiny little bowl after I get all of this wax off. And just a little bit of foreshadowing, I did not get all of this wax off the way I thought I got all this wax on. So if you've ever dealt with like blanks of wood, they typically sometimes will coat it in wax to take it off or to prevent moisture from getting into it. And I thought I had gotten it all off, but even this 15-minute epoxy is not going to be able to hold, and we're going to have issues a little bit later. But anyway, so I took everybody's comments from the previous video that I did last week where I put some drill holes into the blank. It's so small, wasn't able to actually take them out, and decided, you know what, let's take some criticism and some feedback, and let's do something to where we don't have to drill directly into the blank itself. And I thought that was a really good idea. So I took that, I sandwiched this between two waste blocks so that we're not drilling directly into the blank, so we can kind of save the wood from having to have those, you know, drill holes that are on the top, and I admittingly don't like them either. So last week's project, we had those drill holes in there, and I thought this would be a good way to kind of prevent that. And people had left a comment as well saying, hey, those, you know, drill holes kind of take away from the actual end project, which I agree with. And I thought, you know what, this is going to be a good idea. So, you know, we get everything set up, everything's going good. We got the 15-minute epoxy on there. I'm thinking that this is going to, you know, go relatively smooth. Small piece of wood, nothing too large, should be done in, you know, about an hour or two. So get this over to the lathe, and we're working off the material, and I'm starting and stopping the lathe. Everything's going relatively well. And if you've ever worked with Purple Heart before, it is a dense, dense wood. And then my worst fear comes true. It completely detaches, and I'm like, okay, that didn't go the way that I envisioned. So I'm going to have to figure something else out. So I'm like, okay, just get this done and throw that piece of wood away. I'm like, okay, on to the next problem. So I end up coming back. I'm saying, okay, we still got one side good, or one side going well. Let's just put the faceplate on there, drill some holes, attach it, and it should be absolutely fine. So I start putting the faceplate on there, and things are going relatively smooth. I'm like, okay, not a big deal. We still have one side to go. And then as I do that, the other side falls off, so I gotta throw that piece into the trash as well. So then I'm like, okay, how about to ensure that all that wax is off of there, we just go ahead and take the sander to it, and then use that 15-minute epoxy and actually attach another waste block on there. So spend a little time here sanding it down, and all the wax is gone. Then fast forward, get some 15-minute epoxy, mix that up, and then attach another waste block. But bad news is I had to wait 4 or 5 hours to get that done. So this gets mixed up, and then we just, you know, do our simple attachment. And I'm trying so hard to keep my cool about it, because I'm just like, man, I just did not see that coming, and I should have known better. But about 5 hours later, I let the epoxy dry, and then early in the morning, here I am in the workshop, you know, going back at it. And for this being such a small little project, it did have quite a few issues. So it's just part of woodworking. It's, you know, we get good at stuff, and still we end up having problems sometimes, and that's just part of it. But we work through them. So immediately, because my fear is, again, that this is going to detach. So instead of going like straight, making everything into a nice cylindrical shape, I just said, okay, flatten out the bottom and make a mortise just in case it flies off. So priority was just getting a mortise built, because I was like, I just don't have the time to kind of deal with, you know, another failure if that ends up happening. So make a mortise, that goes smooth, and I'm like, okay, let's just make, you know, a small little cylinder and, you know, do our normal thing with it. And luckily for me, this ends up staying attached the entire rest of the way. So we're just working down the material, essentially, getting everything nice and even. And you can see the Purple Heart, kind of grain coming out of it. It's going relatively well. So then we get it reversed, and then we have to get this waste block off of it. And I don't know if my parting tool is not sharp, which I looked at it. It's super duper sharp, but for some reason I am going to have so many issues using this damn thing. So there, we pop that off, get the waste block off, make everything nice and even, come back, finish up the shape, and now we got to work on making or parting it so we can have a lid and main body of the project here. So we're just going to make a mortise so that when I do part it, I can reverse it and then just make a cool little lid out of it. And I'm trying really hard to keep my stuff together because I've already had plenty of problems doing this, and I'm like, gosh, and I really like working with Purple Heart. It's probably one of my favorite woods to work with. And so I make the mortise, and then I start the process of trying to part the damn thing, and you can see the smoke coming off it. It catches the lathe, and I'm like, this thing is sharp. It should be cutting through this, even though Purple Heart is a really dense wood. I just had a lot of issues with the parting, and I'm just like, good Lord. I had to start and stop a couple of times because it kept on catching. I was screaming at my lathe. I was super upset, but I'm just like, listen, I don't have time to handsaw this. And I keep coming back, and then eventually I figure it out, get it separated. I'm like, all right, good grief, just done with it. So we have a little bit of material left to work with here. You can see just how small this pot or this small little bowl is going to be, but I'm like, hey, at least it doesn't have those disgusting drill holes in it. And that's essentially the whole reason for it, was just to try to avoid having to screw into the actual wood itself and taking away from the aesthetic of it. But once we got it separated, the rest of the project goes really smooth. Everything's lined up real nice. Now we're making the lid. I'm trying to size that up, and the rest of it goes relatively easy. And then we reverse it on the chuck, and then once I size it up appropriately, make another mortise, flip it over, and then we'll get rid of the other mortise that's on the other side. So this part, relatively smooth. A nice, fun little project. But man, did we have a lot of issues. We just couldn't seem to get out of my own way. And then I got greedy and went back and tried to work it down even more, and I ended up getting a catch on it. And I'm like, ugh. I was like, just stop before this thing explodes on you. So ended up stopping it, sizing up the lid the way that I wanted it to, and then just trying to easily work back that material that I had, kind of messed up a little bit. So once I get that done, then I go on to sanding. And we really didn't do a lot of sanding. We did 50 to 120 up to 180, but this is what all the shavings look like once I got everything done. And in spite of that block that we started with being very small, the actual wood that was the end project was even smaller. I'm just like, this is barely anything. But we go over here, start sanding. Like I said, we went from 50 to 120 to 180. And, I'm just like, okay, this fun little project just ended up being a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Something very simple, just kind of got out of hand a little bit. But hit it with that wood wax. This is the most satisfying part of the entire video here. You just see the grain of that wood, and I cannot wait to work on my table. I just got to dry it out, level it out, those kinds of things. But man, this looks really, really cool. So overall, really happy how this project turned out in spite of all of the problems. Still made it work. And then this is probably the coolest part here, the lid. There's a small little indentation where the tailstock met up with that piece. And I'm like, okay, it's better than having 4 separate drill holes in it. It still looks good in my opinion. Love Purple Heart. My favorite wood to work with probably, in spite of all the problems. But I think it looks relatively well. And, it's small, but it looks cool. So I hope you guys liked it. I hope you guys are enjoying the videos. I know I'm putting out a lot of shorts, and you guys can see and catch up with projects that I'm doing. But anyway, hope you guys liked it. Hope you got something out of it. And I'll see you guys in the next one. All right. Peace. All right. So project is done. And this little guy is literally a little guy. So, obviously in the commentary I went through all of the problems that I had on this one. But we got something out of it. So, cool little pot, booyah. it's only got that one little divot on top of it where the tailstock kind of hits and meets, and there isn't enough material for me to build anything other than how I did it. But thank you for the suggestion. I was already thinking that the other screw holes where the drill was, putting in the screws so it could all attach, I hated that look. It was awful. I didn't like it personally. I'm sure I went over that in the commentary, but we'll probably use that technique in the future for some other projects. But I've gotten really good about doing these little bowl projects. I think this one looks really cool. Purple Heart. It's probably my favorite wood. It looks amazing. And you guys saw earlier in the video the intro of my Purple Heart slab that I have sitting on my sitting on my floor. And we're gonna make a table out of it. But this little guy looks pretty cool. Something small and something fun. Next week's project will probably be epoxy as well. Be looking out for previews for that one as well. But overall, happy how this one turned out. Not too bad. Not my best work, but definitely better than last week's video. So hope you guys liked it. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to go edit this. It's early in the morning here in Texas. You guys are literally going to be watching this in about 3 hours. And I'll see you guys in the next one. All right. Peace.